Welcome to the Tessa Tubbs Podcast. This is a space for people who are learning to lead themselves, because real self-leadership isn't formed when things are easy. It's formed in the quiet decisions we make when life asks more of us than we expected. And that's the spirit of today's conversation. Somewhere along the way, most of us face a moment where the life we imagine collides with the life we're actually living. A moment that doesn't ask us to perform, it asks us to rise. Today, I'm joined by someone whose life reflects that kind of rising in a very real way. Bryan Neely is a man of deep faith and lived resilience. From walking through personal grief to pushing himself through ultra marathons, his story is one of choosing to rise again and again. He's the owner of Billy Goat Coffee Cafe, a community space built around connection and growth. He serves as a Krav Maga instructor, Young Life ministry leader, ultra marathoner, and military funeral honors officer. Needless to say, Bryan is building a life centered around service, strength, and purpose. He's also the author of Embrace Your Roar, a call to stop comparing, start rising, and step into the life you were created for. Bryan, I'm really glad you're here.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that. I am honored to be here.
Awesome. So to get us started, I just want to dive in. You have such an interesting life and such a diverse background. When you look back over your life, is there a defining moment or season that fundamentally changed how you saw yourself?
Yeah, that's a tough question. I would say when I transitioned from active duty military, this was back in end of 2021. I went through just a devastating breakup. Somebody I thought I was gonna spend my life with. I had moved halfway across the country. I was transitioning from the military and just had a lot of personal stuff that I was dealing with on top of that. And I was faced with, long story short, just a lot of rejection, a lot of unknowns, and a lot of just being at rock bottom. And in that season of life, I really started to see, like, I tell people, when you're at rock bottom, I think if your rock's in the right place, that you're in the best place you could ever be. Because really, there's only one way to go except up, or to go up. And I use words rise up. But I would say that was a season of my life that really, I was faced with a lot of challenges. Recently, I just published a devotional called Mile 17, which is around my TEDx talk where we met. And that was really that's what I was going through in that season of life. Is I was faced with a moment where everything in me wanted to quit. Tried, like I literally was like, I'm done. I'm not doing this anymore. And that led to, I still had to walk through the hardship, but I really leaned into who I am deep down. And then I surrounded myself with people that really reminded me of who I was when I forgot who I was. Right. Because I was in a breaking moment, and it just, throughout that season, the pain and the hardship didn't go away, but it really built the warrior that I see myself as today, and the things I do today are because of that moment.
You said you said an interesting statement about if your rock is in the right place when you hit rock bottom. What does it mean to have your rock in the right place?
So for me, like, I'm a man of faith, and I am a huge believer in my faith. I believe, like, my rock is Jesus and my relationship with the Lord, and I strive to live my life and to shine light and spread love to people, and not to push my beliefs on other people, but to stand my faith and to stand my ground on things, and to be able to just shine light and spread love, and make a difference with my life, leaning into that rock. Like, to me, the Lord really is my strength. He's my provider. He's so on. And really, that's what's carried me through the mountaintops of life, as well as the really deep, dark valleys of life. Even when I've struggled to hold on to that rock as well.
I definitely understand that. You talked about in that season, right? Like how you obviously had the anchor in your faith and your relationship with God. You had the people around you who helped you remember who you were. Was there something you had to confront about yourself, like a belief or a narrative or even an identity that no longer held up? And if so, how did you release that?
Yeah, that's, I I would say for me, rejection has been a common theme that I've had to walk through from really, I would say from a young age. Like I grew up in a household where my parents split. They divorced when I was like 5, and then they actually got back together, and then they split again. And there was just a lot of moving around as a kid. I grew up as a military kid, moving every 3 years. So a lot of transitions, a lot of people get connected and then boom, you move, right? So it's, or people leave for whatever reason. And like, I love both my parents to death. I'm close to both my parents. And the things that have happened have really shaped who I am today. But as I speak, like, I don't speak negatively on them. It's become a blessing in my life. But I would say like the growing up, like rejection, and in some ways you could even use the words like betrayal, because that relationship that I was in when I transitioned from active duty, I mean, there was a lot of rejection, a lot of betrayal that happened in that relationship that led to a lot of internal questions of like, man, like the theme of love was something that I really, really struggled with, and really, like, I really wrestled with that. And I think it's interesting how that season of life, like later on in my life, I got asked like by my mom and stepdad to lead their vow renewal.
Wow.
And like talking about love and things that honestly I didn't want to do. I didn't want to talk about that. I was wrestling with it myself. And really thinking like, am I worthy to do this? Like at the time I was the only single person at that vow renewal. So I just thought it was kind of comical, but it really was something much bigger than the actual what you're doing.
Right.
And like it really does tie into identity and like understanding like my love is not dependent on what another human being says per se. It's like I am loved, and this really, I believe like God is love, and the Bible is where I go to for truth and the source of like reminding myself of who I am and who God says I am. And that's, yeah, I mean, I think that's something that's helped to reshape my mind,
Hmm.
and to reshape who I see myself as, but also who I surround myself with. Because it's not only like in the spiritual faith realm, it's also in just the worldly side of things, right? Like being a world champion athlete, like I try to surround myself with people who are driven and who are not going to put up with excuses. And in a business realm, like I want to be successful. And I think for me, it all like my life bleeds over in every area, whether it's military, civilian, like it doesn't matter. It's all like who I am is who you're going to get. And that is something I stand on because my identity is not going to waver on what room I'm in. Now, the way you present your identity can be a little bit different, right? Like, um, but I would say I know it's probably a broad way to answer your question if I even really answer specifically what you're wanting.
No, that's super helpful. I mean, I think just as you were talking, I mean, your story carries both this sense of strength as well as loss. And I think when someone walks through grief or deep struggle, as you're talking about, there's often a version of ourselves that we just can't return to. Right. And as you describe, like that realization of right, like, hey, I'm going to be very intentional about moving away from some of the messages, right, that were received through childhood and life around rejection and what does it mean to be loved. Like you said, it invites you to really become someone new and get anchored in that new identity.
And literally, like for me, like yesterday, I had an opportunity to speak with the lady about literally what I went through in that breakup, and to see, I
Mm,
see a lot of times like turning my obstacles into opportunities. And I
right.
think that's a mindset shift of instead of just looking at the obstacle and saying, oh, this sucks or this is hard. Like, yeah, it probably is, but it's looking at it and seeing, okay, I can't change this, but I can change. I'm going to find a way to get around it because
Right.
I still have a race to run, and I'm going to cross the finish line. And I think like once you really establish like, hey, I'm going to cross this finish line, it's simple. Just lock in and realize like whatever happens, it's not easy and it's going to be challenging, but it is simple. just stay the course, and you might go backwards sometimes in order to go forward. And I think that's something that's really helped me leaning into that too.
So when that's very provocative for me, because I think a lot of times we talk about resilience, we talk about, it sounds like this like big thing, but what I'm hearing you say is simplify, right? It's just keep showing up, one foot in front of the other. I want to unpack this notion of locking in, right? Like I talk to a lot of people around resilience and endurance, and it's like, but in the throes of it, the mental exercise, the conversation that's in their head that, oftentimes they end up quitting versus continuing. How do you lock in and sort of push away the narratives inside of your head that tells you to throw in the towel instead?
I think self-talk is extremely important. That can look differently for people. For me, I've seen how negative my mind can go in a matter of seconds.
Mm-hmm.
And it's being able to identify one, like I establish, like for instance, I'll use a race, for instance, like an ultra marathon race. If I'm saying I'm going to commit to running whatever the race is, we'll say a 50-mile race. If I'm going to run a 50-mile race, then I know where my goal is. Well, I'm going to face challenges along that journey. Whether it's 50 miles, 5K, or 1 mile, it doesn't matter. Like every person, you're going to face different challenges and things that you didn't expect. But it's remembering and like reminding yourself of the big picture and like where I'm headed.
Mm-hmm.
So dialing it back into life, for me, I've done 195 military funerals as a military officer. And like it does remind me, I think about that a lot, of where I'm eventually, we're all going to leave this earth the same way.
Right.
And a lot of people don't like to think about that for rightful reasons. But for me, it's like I do think about it because I realize like my time is short and I don't know when my time is going to end. So I want to maximize and capitalize on every day and every second that I have because it could be my last. So I think thinking about the big picture really helps when I have moments of life is just really hard and I feel defeated. And then I also focus on like, how can I turn what I'm going through into an inspiration for somebody else? That's what my mind always goes to, is this is not about me, because if it's only about me, I'm probably going to quit, to be honest with you. Like there's something inside of me that really desires to grow and to be the best person I can be. But it's not just so I can get the glory and stand on podiums and all that. Cause like I've done those things and they just leave you miserable if that's all you're chasing.
Right.
So for me, it's how can I turn what I'm doing into an opportunity to help somebody else? That means that I got to get through whatever I'm going through. And I think that really helps me mentally, talking myself through it.
I like that a lot. I mean, what I'm hearing in your story is this idea that rising isn't always a dramatic thing. It in some
Yeah.
ways a very sort of quiet, moment by moment, day by day thing. And I like this notion of simplifying it and really focusing on not quitting on the person you're becoming.
Yeah.
I
That's
think
good.
that can reframe how many of us think about resilience, and it moves it away from this sort of intensity mindset and this like
Yeah,
for willpower
for sure.
versus it's just one decision after the other, right? And not
Mhm.
giving up on the future version of your desired self. That's awesome.
Yeah. And I've just seen in a lot of people, it's like, if you don't quit, like there's one way to assure you're not going to make whatever it is to give up. If you give up, you're definitely not going to make it. The part that I struggle with is, am I wasting my time? Should I do something else? Like that's where I can wrestle with like, oh, because I'm going to go all in, but if I'm locked in on the wrong thing, then that's a problem too. So
For sure. So, okay, so you started us with like this place of realization and sort of the dark moment and and the journey you've been on. Help me understand today on the other side of that growth. How do you live differently now? And what anchors you? I know you've talked about faith. What else anchors you when life gets heavy again?
I would say leaning into reminding myself of the hard things that I've overcame. Like when I face something really hard, and this is part of self-talk. So like during a race or during just, I mean, people would probably think I'm crazy if they follow me around all the time, because I I do believe like there's power in talking out loud to myself and saying like, Bryan, like you're a champion. You've been through so much harder. Or taking whatever the scenario is and trying to say something that's going to uplift and remind myself to not
Mhm.
get sucked into the downward spiral of whatever the obstacle is in front of me.
I
Um,
love that.
that's something that's helped me a lot.
Are there other, so that sort of, obviously you've named a few, right? Like anchoring on faith and your
Yeah.
relationship with God, community, people around you,
Hmm.
even talking out loud, speaking to yourself. Are there other values or rhythms or practices that help you keep aligned in this season?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say doing hard things.
Mm.
So, so for me, it's like I'm a huge believer on really looking in and like identity is the word that I use, like embracing who you really are to the core, and then getting around the right group of people, and then doing hard things. Because when you do hard things, one, it helps you to be accountable to continue to push yourself. Because when you reach that hard thing, you, specifically in a fitness type realm for me, the last thing I want is to feel absolutely miserable through whatever that is. So it forces me to really train and to prepare, which is something that I found just putting something on a calendar that's
Mm.
hard, that is, and hard is subjective, right? Like something that I'm going to do might be different than something you're going to do, whether it's in business, whether it's in health and fitness, it doesn't matter. It's doing something hard. Like maybe it's, I'm going to reach out to a friend once a week and tie into that community thing. That's, it's little things like that that I think something that is going to challenge you, doing something like that every day, but
Mhm.
then also putting things on the calendar ahead, one that you look forward to, two that you know is going to push you to work, because otherwise you're going to face the consequences of shame, humiliation, just let down, embarrassment, whatever. And I think that those things have helped a lot. But then also the last piece is being humble. Part of that is surrounding myself with people that are ahead of where I'm at in different things, to remind me that I'm not as good at times as I think I am. And to also just be there to help, like I can look up to and I can learn. And that, so I think it's a full circle. That is something that's really helped me a lot. But the doing hard things is a practical thing that I think has really helped just mentally. And like that's why when it gets cold outside and it snows here, that's a big reason why I like to go outside. And in my mind, I literally will tell myself, and sometimes out loud, like there's 99% of people right now are probably cuddled up in a warm blanket.
Right.
And I've had friends be like, Bryan, but I like my warm blanket. And I was like, yeah, I do too. But I like to do hard things first, so then I can enjoy the warm blanket.
And you're right. That warm blanket feels a
Yeah.
lot more comforting and soothing after you've done a hard thing.
Yeah.
That's fair. That's fair. I'm just curious, as you continue to share your perspective with others, when you think about everything you've lived and learned, what do you understand now about rising that you didn't understand before?
Well, I would say we always have a choice to rise. Like we're all gonna fall, right? And whatever that fall can look differently for different people in different seasons of life. And the more that you grow, like the harder, I think the harder things typically tend to get, or just it just varies. It's different for each person. Um, but I would say something that I've learned is it's sometimes the hardest decision is just choosing to rise and deciding that I'm going to rise, because at least for me, once I make the decision, then I just figure it out. But making the decision to rise, that's, I think, the hardest moment, because that's where most people quit. Or then there's that moment of, okay, I made the decision, but now life really gets hard. And now I have to choose to rise up, and I have to continue to choose that. And that's where I would say I've learned just practical things that have helped me to overcome those. And the same way that I believe in building systems, and say like business is the same thing I try to do in my own life. So it's little things like, if you have if like, for a lot of people, being able to use a calendar and like having calendar reminders and alerts and stuff like that helps you to stay on track, helps you to stay scheduled and organized. And most people that are successful tend to have a pretty organized calendar, at least of some sort. And then, but it's very similar, I think, in the life side of things. And it's like, in my day to day, I'll do things like, sometimes I'll use a sticky note to put on a door that I know I'm going to cross, and it'll be something uplifting or remind me, not just like, hey, don't forget this, but hey, you're a champion, or smile today because you are loved, or make a difference in someone's life. Like there's little checks and balances that I think we can do that comes from understanding yourself and understanding what is actually going to motivate you. Right. So like, if you're motivated, like a lot of people are motivated, I think, by finances. I'm not personally driven just by finances. But if you're motivated by that, like it could be something practical. Like if you don't do this, you have to give $1 away or whatever, like, or vice versa. And there's just finding little practical things that can help you with the big picture of where you want to go.
I love that. I love the reminder that, it's not just making the first choice. It's repeatedly making the choice over and over as life gets harder. And it's leaving room for trying new things, right? Like being curious about what's going to motivate you. Because like you said, what will work for one person may not work as well for the other. And I think that's really important, because I think we live in a day and age where we expect things to be one and done, right? Like I had the thought, I did something, it happened. Right. And that's just not how life works. And the more we understand that going in, we're not as disappointed or set back or immobilized when, life requires repeated decisions and exploring to figure out what works for us.
Right. And I think cutting grace for for yourself too, I think is something that can be really challenging for a lot of people. And it's realizing like the same person you were a year ago is not the same person you are today. So the things that you did to make that decision a year ago is not going to be the same as it is today, probably. And being okay with that, and being willing to understand and accept the fact of, I am growing. And it's like, for instance, sometimes in some seasons that I'm really just having a hard time or struggling to understand things, working out, which would surprise people, is not something I can go to at times. Like, it's like, I just can't do this for my stress relief as much as I used to at times. So it's like finding different things, like whether it's listening to music, talking to a friend. Sometimes I need a friend to tell me that I'm wrong, and sometimes I need a friend to baby me and remind me that I'm okay. Like, so it's just understanding like what you need, and being comfortable and being open to realizing that we all have vulnerable spots of our life. But I've found the more that we open those up in the right healthy manner with certain people, I think that tends to bring a lot of healing and a lot of growth. And then you look back and you're like, whoa, who was I 2 years ago? Like, I'm a whole different, better version of the person that I don't even recognize when I look back.
Right. Yeah. On that note, I want to pause here and speak directly to our listening audience. If there's a thread running through this conversation, it's this: rising isn't reserved for extraordinary people. It's really made of ordinary decisions repeated over time. And maybe the real question isn't whether life will be asking something hard of you. It's whether you'll trust yourself when it does. And so I just want to invite you to reflect on, where in your life right now are you being invited to rise? Not perform, not prove, not push, but simply rise into who you're becoming. And what would it look like to take one honest step in that direction? Bryan, before we close, I just want to make space for you to share where people can learn more about your work and how they can stay connected to you. Where can they find you?
Yeah, so mostly right now it's through my social media platforms. which is on Instagram is Bryan Neely 12. Facebook, it's my name. And then I just published a devotional that's called Mile 17, which is themed around my TEDx talk that people can find on YouTube. But the devotional is found on Amazon, and it's been what's been heaviest on my heart lately. And what I've been able to use is just a tool to point people to something that's really helped me, and to give them practical tools to help them walk through their own Mile 17 moments, which are moments where you're faced with a breaking point and turning that breaking point into a breakthrough. So those are the main areas that I would say for people to find me as of right now.
That's awesome. Well, I will endorse that TED Talk 100%. It was very powerful and moving. I'm excited to learn more about the devotional that was recently published. I want to invite our listening audience that if this episode stirred something in you, consider sharing it with someone who might need that reminder too. And if you're not already following the podcast, I'd love for you to join us for the next episode, where we'll continue exploring what it looks like to lead yourself well and build a life that holds up over time. Until then.